G'day guys, my name is CJ. This is the Pixel 8 Pro, and I feel it's still pretty underrated. Let's take a look. And when I say underrated, I mean that aside from all the initial coverage when it was first released, you don't really hear or see much of it in the whole smartphone tech zeitgeist anymore. Now that can be a good thing because it means there's no negative coverage with any gates of any sort, but then it isn't being consistently referred to in a glowing light either. And that's interesting because to me, the Pixel 8 Pro is, even after a few months of use, in my opinion, still one of the most well-rounded phones you can get today. Not only because it's physically more rounded out in design, making it more comfortable to hold, but rounded out in pretty much all aspects of the phone aside from the screen, which is now flat. In the grand scheme of things, there weren't any real downsides to last year's Pixel 7 Pro, and so there wasn't a lot that needed to change anyway. And that's probably the biggest compliment you can actually pay Google. They've reached a happy place with hardware and only really iterating where it matters. Let's talk about hardware first. To start with, it's got a flat Quad HD AMOLED display that looks really nice with nice punchy colors, sharp details thanks to its Quad HD resolution. But weirdly enough though, the resolution is actually marginally less than last year's 7 Pro, which had a resolution of 512 pixels per inch compared to 489 here in the 8 Pro. But of course, it's a flagship, it'll reach up to 120Hz refresh rates, so animations are smooth and slick as you'd expect. Now the flat screen also means that it's super easy to apply screen protectors, which for me is a huge selling point, and I think it's quite an important factor for a lot of customers too. There's also no issues with weird color casts when you look at the screen at an angle, and then inside you've got an inbuilt fingerprint sensor as well, which works okay. It's not the fastest nor the most accurate, but it does a pretty decent job. And it's helped immensely by the addition of a really useful camera face unlock, which makes unlocking the phone an absolute breeze. Plus, it's apparently secure enough for apps like your finance apps too, which is interesting. Unless of course the ambient light drops way down, in which case that face unlock won't work, and it's back to the fingerprint sensor. Now, as mentioned before, the 8 Pro is more rounded out. The corners are less boxy, and the overall feel actually pushes against the current trend of phones that are increasingly squared off and boxy. And those rounded corners means it sits really nice and comfortably in the palm whilst holding with one hand. No digging in and leaving an indent like some newer, sharper phones like this guy. Now the overall design language is pretty similar to last year with that camera visor Daft Punk look. The camera module itself again blends in really nicely with the frame for a unified appearance, and I'm a huge fan of that frosted glass on the back because it's way more fingerprint resistant. But it still definitely takes the cake for being the most slippery phone out there. There's been a ton of times where it's slid off a wireless charging pad, it's almost smashed a couple of times having left it on the armrest of my couch for example, and that armrest isn't exactly round. So either get a case for it, or just keep holding it and just don't let go. That being said though, of the few times that it has dropped in the last few months, which has ranged from carpet to wood floors, the phone has actually copped it reasonably well and, well, knock on wood, it hasn't shattered the screen or dented the frame yet, so it at least is made of some pretty sturdy stuff. Otherwise, externally, it covers all the bases you'd expect to see in a flagship phone. It's got a loud stereo speaker setup that sounds really nice, it's got really clicky buttons on the side, and it's IP68 water resistant. No surprises here. So realistically then, the only real change then is the shape of the phone and screen. Both positive changes if you ask me. Oh, and of course, that thermometer on the back, which is something I almost forgot to mention whilst writing this script. And that probably says it all about how useful this feature actually is. Honestly, I probably used it about 3 or 4 times, then just forgot about it. In the end, it was a pretty cool gimmick, but I didn't have a compelling use case for it for myself, and I couldn't really vouch for the accuracy of it either. Maybe a little bit of wasted R&D on Google's part, but it's also not helped by the fact that you've got to put the phone relatively close to the heat source in order to get an accurate reading. So it's not as if you're going to be holding it right up against a hot fry pan to see if it's at heat, but I still commend Google for just trying new things. Now internally, there's 12 gigs of RAM, and storage in the Pro goes all the way up to 1 terabyte now, for those who really want to future-proof the phone. We also of course have the new G3 Tensor chip, which is slightly faster than last year, and I emphasize slightly because it never really blew me away with regards to performance. Now, to be fair, I haven't experienced any major software glitches, but it's also been a little hit and miss when you really try to push it, whether it be shooting 4K video, doing long batches of photo editing or gaming, and it definitely gets a bit warm when you do push it. You can see performance throttling a little bit, and that only results in light stutters here and there. Again, nothing major that's going to stand out for the average consumer, but it also doesn't quite get the crown of a top performer like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 that we see in phones in 2024 like the S24. Now, it shouldn't be surprising given that all its benchmark scores tend to sit very close to the G2, which is already a year old. Plus, what I have noticed as well is that the battery life is about the same as the Pixel 7 Pro, and it's not overly surprising since capacity is not really that different. The 8 Pro has 50 extra milliamps, that's not much, and if the processor performs about the same, then it's not surprising that efficiency is going to be about the same as well. So for me, I get 4 to 5 hours of screen on time tops, which has been about average, and it's been pretty consistent even with a few months of software updates and consistent use. But as mentioned before, with general day-to-day use, it's still pretty smooth, it's really reliable, and given Google's massive emphasis on AI features, it definitely handles most of these pretty reliably. Now, thanks to recent updates, Gemini, formerly Bard, is now on tap if you've got a Google One subscription. You get the same circle to search feature that was introduced with the S24 series, and it works really well. Weirdly enough, for a first version, it's really good. It's super accurate and is actually useful. Another AI feature in the Pixel that I love and use quite a lot is Best Take, which helps correct group photos. Now, if you take multiple photos when taking a group selfie, for example, the phone will analyze all these photos, identify the different faces, and then correct individual faces if someone's blinking or out of focus. It's saved my bacon a few times over the last few months. Plus, you've got the same magic eraser tools, which have continued to be one of the easiest ways to remove objects or move things around. Audio Magic Eraser in video recording works pretty well for a consumer feature. Though it does tend to make sound seem a little muffled in challenging conditions. And speaking of video, a lot has been made of the new AI video boost that's only available on the Pixel 8 Pro. Now, this is weird because, to be clear, none of this stuff is actually done locally on the phone, so it's actually a software lock to the Pixel 8 Pro, which is a bit of a shame given Google's push for AI. But what effectively happens is your video that's recorded is uploaded onto Google's servers, and then it uses Google's online computational algorithms to make adjustments to the video. So this can range from tweaking dynamic range, improving color, and reducing shakiness, or to provide a video that is quote unquote true to life. In reality though, I can't say it's done anything overly groundbreaking. Video from the Pixel 8 Pro is already pretty good in 2024 standards, with 4K 60 video recording that looks really nice. So I'm not overly convinced there is anything significantly better with Video Boost. Plus, the fact that it relies on an internet connection is a bit of a downer. It's basically saying that the G3 chip, whilst is AI focused, doesn't actually have enough juice to do this kind of processing on board, and that's disappointing for such an AI-centric release. But otherwise, when it comes to the overall software experience, Pixels have a very specific Pixel-centric feel to it, and it's no different here. We've got Google's vision for Android 14. It's an approachable UI, and all the elements are very bubbly and bright. It's a far more user-friendly experience compared to what Android used to be. It's a nice, fluid and responsive experience, aided by its 120Hz screen. But let's talk about what makes a Pixel. Its cameras. As evident by its name, you'd expect it to be pretty good. And they are. The 8 Pro has a similar system to what we saw in the 7 Pro. You've got a 50 megapixel main wide lens with that larger sensor, but you've also now got a 48 megapixel ultra wide, which is a step up from the 12 megapixel one in the 7 Pro, and a 48 megapixel 5x telephoto that's capable of a super res 30 zoom. It continues where the 7 Pro left off, and it proves probably the main downside to last year's model, which was its slightly weaker ultra wide. Photos taken across the board with the 8 Pro is visibly sharper compared with the 7 Pro, especially in the ultra wide, with the extra megapixel count playing a big role here. Overall, it's an excellent system that's pretty smooth and quick to take photos, and in scenarios both daytime and night, it takes photos that are really pleasing to the eye and easily used for things like social media and capturing moments with loved ones, and it's super reliable. On top of this, the Pixel still nails skin tones compared to others, especially with people of color. Photos are almost always pleasing to the eye. I can't complain about them. Like newer iPhones, the Pixel also utilizes the larger megapixel count to do a 2x zoom that is native, pretty similar to what we see with phones like the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro. Now those 2x zoom photos are okay. I mean, they'll never replace a native telephoto though, because you don't get that same level of background compression that you see in a native zoom. But in a pinch, they're usable, they're fine. But photos taken by the 5x zoom is actually pretty good, and the photos match the Pixel's overall look and feel in terms of sharpness, dynamic range, and contrast. If you haven't noticed already, I predominantly use it to take photos of my dog from across the room or from across the park, and it's awesome for this. Then when you start going further and push it to the max with 30x super res, like all other versions before it, it looks more like a painting than a photo, so I'm only going to use it very, very occasionally. Now the front camera is a nice, wide, autofocusing selfie lens that makes really decent selfie photos, which is pretty standard and is still one of my favorite in any smartphone. But overall, the 8 Pro is everything the 7 Pro is, but better. For me, there are no glaring disadvantages in my opinion. The phone ticks basically all the important points in a smartphone, and then some. Underrated, and you don't hear anything about it, but I think that's a good thing. It means it hasn't failed in anything really. It's a solid option, and it's now been a few months since it was released, so you can actually find discounts for the phone. And so if you're looking for a brilliant, solid, and reliable phone in 2024, then you could do worse than to get yourself a Pixel 8 Pro. But what do you guys think of the Pixel 8 Pro? Did you buy one? What are your favorite or least favorite things about it? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, give us a like, subscribe for more, and ding the bell icon so you don't miss out. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.